My father held the check like it was poison, $38 million written in my grandfather's shaky script, and before I could say a word, he struck a match. The paper curled black as the flame ate through the numbers, through my name, through everything Walter Hayes had left me. My mother lunged forward and tore the envelope from my hands, shredding it until his handwriting became confetti on the polished conference table. "This is what happens when you betray your family," she hissed, her face flushed red beneath her pearls. My sister Natalie stood behind them, arms crossed, that half-smile playing on her lips like she'd already won. They wanted me to scream, to beg, to break the way I had when I was 19, and they erased me from their lives. But I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes but keeps you breathing. Because what they burned wasn't what they thought it was, and what they never saw was the envelope still tucked inside my coat, waiting. The real one. The one Grandpa told me they'd try to destroy. The conference room smelled like lemon oil and decades of secrets. The kind of scent that clings to mahogany and old money. I hadn't been in this building since Grandpa Walter's health started failing, and even now I only came because I'd promised him I would. Mr. Brennan, his lawyer for over 30 years, sat at the head of the table with a folder thick enough to hold a lifetime. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace with fingers that hadn't done real work in 20 years. My father sat rigid, jaw clenched, like he was preparing for war. And Natalie wore a cream blouse too expensive for grief and an expression that said she'd already calculated her share. Mr. Brennan cleared his throat and opened the will with slow, deliberate movements. "We are gathered to honor the final wishes of Walter Hayes," he said, his voice steady as stone. He looked directly at me before reading the first allocation. "To Natalie Hayes, the Jackson Hole cabin, and the vintage 1959 Gibson guitar." Natalie blinked, clearly expecting more. "To Richard and Victoria Hayes," he continued, "the heirloom grandfather clock, select vinyl records, and a $10,000 charitable donation made in their name." My mother made a sound between a scoff and a choke. "That can't be right." Mr. Brennan didn't flinch. He turned the page. "To Elena Hayes, my granddaughter, my confidant, he leaves his entire financial estate totaling $38,246,000. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Then my father barked, "What?" Natalie's jaw twitched. My mother stood up, her chair scraping loud against the floor. "She abandoned us. She doesn't deserve a dime." Mr. Brennan continued without lifting his eyes. "This will was signed, notarized, and filed by Walter Hayes personally 3 months prior to his death." But they didn't hear the rest. My father lunged across the table and snatched the check Mr. Brennan had just slid toward me, holding it up like evidence of a crime. "You think this buys you back in?" he snarled. That's when he lit the match. I was 19 the last time my father and I spoke. Really spoke. He'd just found out I turned down a full ride to his alma mater's business program and enrolled instead in a small liberal arts college upstate to study visual design. He called it a hobby with delusions. My mother stood behind him with her lips pressed so thin they almost disappeared. "If you walk out that door," he said, "you don't walk back in." I walked. 3 weeks later, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my bedroom stripped bare. The desk, the bed, even the bookshelf where Grandpa used to leave notes between the pages, all gone. In their place were 2 gray armchairs, a fake orchid, and a framed print of a lighthouse I'd never seen. The door plate had been changed from Elena to guest room A. Natalie passed me in the hallway and laughed. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like you were using it." They didn't cut me off all at once. At first it was small things. Missed birthday cards, unanswered calls. Then the rent check didn't show up. When I called, my mother sighed and said, "Actions have consequences, Elena. You wanted independence. Now you have it." I would have lost my apartment if Grandpa hadn't stepped in. He wired the exact amount 2 days later, no questions asked. After that, the money came quietly, never flashy, just enough to keep the lights on. With it came letters in his elegant, shaky script. He never criticized me for leaving. He never asked me to come back. But in every line there was something stronger. He saw me. The last letter I received arrived 3 weeks before he passed. It said only, "Survival isn't weakness, it's the first proof of strength." I tucked that letter into my wallet and carried it through every rejection, every silent holiday, every night I pretended not to care. I carried it still, even as the ashes of the fake check cooled on the table in front of me, and my hand slipped into my coat to touch the real envelope waiting there. The first thing I did when I got home was lock the door and slip off my heels. My legs trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion held too long. I laid my coat on the kitchen chair and pulled out the envelope Grandpa had given me a month before he died. He'd handed it to me in a quiet booth at Hillstone Diner, wrapped in a cloth napkin like a relic. "Don't open it," he said, "unless they burn it." And they had. I broke the wax seal and unfolded the contents slowly. A single check, almost identical to the one that had turned to ash just hours ago. Same number, same signature, but this one was marked in tiny red letters, "Non-negotiable copy." I turned it over and found a small USB drive taped to the back with a note in Grandpa's blocky handwriting. "Let them burn it, then open the real file." I plugged it in. No password, no loading. Screen. Just a folder labeled Inheritance. Inside was a PDF of a trust transfer form, signed, witnessed, and filed through a firm I didn't recognize. The account number ended in digits I'd memorized as a child, his birthday backwards. The funds were real. The transfer had already happened weeks ago. The check they torched wasn't just a decoy, it was bait. The next morning I tried to check my bank balance, part habit, part reassurance. The screen blinked once, then again, before an error message appeared. Account not found. I tried another card. Declined. I refreshed and typed slower, like precision could fix a glitch. Still nothing. I called the bank. The man on the other end hesitated. "I'm sorry, Miss Hayes," he said, tapping keys I couldn't see. "Our system has your account marked inactive. Deceased, actually." My mouth went dry. "That's a mistake." He paused. "It was certified by the registrar's office, dated 2 weeks ago." I hung up before my voice could crack. The DMV confirmed it an hour later. The woman behind the glass screen blinked at her monitor, frowned, and said, "You're flagged as legally deceased. Death certificate filed under your full name, Elena Victoria Hayes." Her tone was flat, but her eyes flicked up with pity. "You'll need to file a correction. That process can take months." I didn't answer. I walked out into the cold, dazed, like someone had peeled back the edges of the world. Across the street, a woman stood half-shadowed beneath bare trees. Her sunglasses were too large for the gray sky. She wore a pale blue silk scarf looped once around her neck, the same scarf my mother claimed the dry cleaners lost 3 years ago. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. She was watching. I stepped back into foot traffic and moved without thinking, not fast but deliberate. When I turned the corner, she was gone. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and pulled the USB from its case. I wasn't just disinherited, I was being erased, carefully, quietly, and thoroughly, and someone was making sure it stuck. I opened the folder Grandpa had labeled Inheritance and found another file I'd missed before. An email with no subject line, just a sentence. "They are not after the money, they're after the signature." Attached was an unsigned asset transfer form for Hayes and Sterling Holdings. Below it, a second form signed. My name was there, but the signature wasn't mine. They'd forged it. They were selling the company. I logged into the internal dashboard Grandpa had set up months before, access I didn't even know I had. Transactions, proposals, asset reassignments, every move approved under my name while my legal status remained deceased. I was more than disinherited. I was a loophole, a convenient silence. They thought they'd taken everything, but they'd left a trail, sloppy, bold, rooted in arrogance. The kind that believed no one like me would ever come back. The brass key had been sitting in my nightstand for years, wrapped in the same worn handkerchief Grandpa gave it to me on my 18th birthday. I never asked what it opened. He just said, "You'll need this someday when you're ready to claim yourself." That day had come. Langford Vault sat behind an unmarked door near the historic district, tucked between a wine shop and a faded bookstore. The woman at the desk took one look at the key, checked her records, and led me down a quiet corridor. The air grew colder until we reached a narrow room lined with metal drawers. "Box 17, she said, unlocking it and sliding it forward. I waited until the door closed before reaching inside. A black fireproof folder lay there, smooth and cold. I opened it slowly. The first page was a certified cashier's check, real this time, with the bank seal embedded into the paper. $38 million addressed to me. Next were notarized land deeds transferring full ownership of the family estate's underlying property. Then stock certificates for Hayes and Sterling Holdings, every voting share, every executive authority. My name inked across each one, and at the bottom, a flash drive in a velvet pouch. Back home, I slid it into my laptop. Grandpa's face filled the screen. He looked older than I remembered, sitting in the sunroom with light pouring over his shoulder. "If you're seeing this, Elena," he said slowly, "then they did what I feared. They tried to erase you." He leaned forward, eyes tired but sharp. "You were always the quiet one, the one who saw everything, felt too much, asked for nothing. That's why they feared you. That's why I trusted you." His voice softened. "This isn't just money. It's memory. It's legacy. And if they tried to burn yours down, this is how you come back." The screen faded to black, and I knew exactly where I needed to go next. The name on the lease was W.H. Merrill, a name Grandpa once used for fishing licenses and antique auctions, a joke he explained as Walter Hayes, like the flower that keeps growing where it's not supposed to. I remembered that on the drive out past the city limits, through rusted farmland and forgotten lots, until I pulled up to a squat row of storage units and found number 19B. The lock clicked open with the small brass key from the velvet pouch. The air inside was stale but not untouched. A single metal shelf lined the far wall, and in the center, like it had been placed there just for me, was a black fireproof briefcase. Inside was a manila folder with my original birth certificate, not the updated one with my stepfather's surname edited in later. This one held only mine, Elena Victoria Hayes. No hyphen, no edits. Next were letters, 12 in total, each in Grandpa's unmistakable script. Most were dated within weeks of key family events. My college graduation, my parents' vow renewal, the Christmas I spent alone. He'd written them but never mailed them. One line repeated often: "They won't erase you. Not while I'm still standing." Beneath the letters was a notarized will, dated after the supposed date of my death. His signature was strong, deliberate. In it, I was named sole beneficiary. Not Natalie, not Richard or Victoria. Me. But what stilled my breath was the deed. Hayes Estate, Charleston, South Carolina. Ownership, Elena Victoria Hayes. My fingers brushed over the embossed seal. I hadn't just inherited a house. I'd inherited the foundation, the ground beneath their power. And they didn't know. I sat down on a cracked plastic chair near the door, clutching the folder to my chest, feeling the shape of my name for the first time in years. I wasn't a ghost, and they had no idea I was already walking back through the door they thought they'd slammed shut. Sylvia Keller didn't speak much when I handed her the briefcase. She just opened it, scanned the documents with sharp eyes, and said, "We'll move fast." There was no awe in her tone, just certainty, like she'd seen enough family betrayals to know when the paper trail held fire. We filed the challenge within 48 hours. The hearing was set for Monday. The courthouse smelled like waxed floors and old decisions. I wore black, not for mourning, but because armor doesn't always clang. My parents arrived together, flanked by a young lawyer in a too-tight suit and a too-loose smirk. Natalie trailed behind them, lips glossed, phone in hand. They didn't look at me. Judge Morrison presided, known for clipped sentences and low tolerance for theatrics. When our case was called, he nodded towards Sylvia. She stood, calm and deliberate. "We are here to contest the execution of the estate of Walter Hayes," she said, "on grounds of forgery, coercion, and identity suppression." The opposing counsel rolled his eyes. "Your Honor, my clients are the documented beneficiaries. Any attempt to revise the will posthumously is not only unfounded, it's emotional. Sylvia tapped her tablet. Your Honor, the deceased anticipated this. With a single click, the lights dimmed and the screen behind the bench lit up. Grandpa's face appeared. If they're watching this, he said, his voice steady and clear, it means they tried to bury her. The courtroom went still. Natalie's mouth opened, then closed. My mother paled. My father shifted like he was about to interrupt, but Judge Morrison raised a hand. Enough! Grandpa continued. Let the record show I changed the will knowingly, under no pressure. I made Elena sole heir because she earned it, because she endured. Judge Morrison turned to my parents, his voice cold as granite. You didn't just try to manipulate this court. You tried to erase a person. Then he looked at me. This court recognizes Elena Hayes as the sole legal heir to Walter Hayes' estate. The respondent's assets are to be frozen pending further investigation. I exhaled, not from relief, but release. The damage was done. Now came the reckoning. Natalie texted twice before I answered. The first message was short, please. The second was longer, clumsier. Can we just talk? Just us. Like before. I agreed to meet her at a cafe near the courthouse. Neutral ground, no history attached. She was already there when I arrived, stirring a coffee she hadn't touched. Her smile trembled when she saw me. I didn't know, she said before I could sit. About the death certificate, about the will. They told me it was a routine form. I just signed where Dad told me to. I didn't speak. I set my phone on the table, screen dark but recording. I swear, Elena, I didn't mean for any of this. I didn't know they'd go that far. Her voice cracked. I thought we were just trying to protect what was ours. What was yours? I repeated. She flinched. I mean, I didn't think you'd fight. You always just left. That part was true. But I wasn't the girl who left anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was scared. I thought if I didn't go along, they'd cut me out too. I watched her wipe a tear with the sleeve of her expensive coat. It wasn't that I didn't believe she felt regret. I just didn't care if she did. No threats, no rage, just silence. I stood, tucked the phone back into my pocket, and stepped away without looking back. Her voice followed me halfway across the cafe, but I didn't stop. Outside, the air smelled like distant rain. I pulled my coat tighter and walked, not toward the past, not even toward revenge, just forward. The courthouse steps were quieter than I expected. No cameras, no confrontation, just the sound of my boots tapping steady against old concrete as I made my way down. In my hand was the deed, my name etched in bold print beneath the seal of the county. No more doubt, no more pretending. I paused just before the last step and turned back, facing the building I'd fought so long to be heard in. I held the deed in front of me and took a single photo. No smile, just stillness. The caption I typed was simple. They tried to burn the legacy. I inherited the foundation. Then I shut my phone off and slipped it into my bag. No victory dance, no announcement, no need. I walked 5 blocks in silence to the small brick studio I'd closed on 2 days earlier. A modest space with tall windows and scuffed floors, tucked between a florist and a forgotten laundromat. It wasn't much yet, but it was mine. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and reached for the envelope Grandpa had left in the vault, the one marked, "Start here." Inside were 3 things: a hand-drawn sketch of the studio's blueprint, a folded business license application already half completed in his handwriting, and a letter with 4 words underlined. Make something they can't erase. I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, the weight of everything I'd lost and reclaimed settling around me like dust after a storm. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was the beginning, and I was ready. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Elena's place? And don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life stories of resilience, betrayal, and triumph. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.
Darkness was already closing in when they made it worse. I had just gotten home from the hospital, a panic attack that hit like a heart attack. My boss had let me go that morning after I missed too many shifts. My savings were gone. My lights were about to be cut off. I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mom. I didn't even ask for much. Just help covering rent for 1 month. Just time to breathe. Just a moment of family. She let me speak. Then she exhaled, long and dramatic. You're on your own now, Jasmine. I froze. She didn't stop there. She laughed. A tight, bitter laugh. You're grown. You made your choices. We've helped enough. I could hear the TV in the background, the clink of her wine glass, the comfort of her peace, while mine was falling apart. I asked if Dad was there. She handed the phone to him without a word. We won't waste another dollar on a failure, he said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, what happened. Not, are you okay? Just that. Then I heard Grandpa mutter in the background, loud enough for me to catch every syllable. Some children just bring shame. Maybe she should have been more like Derek. That was it. The final stone thrown. The comparison I was raised under, now weaponized as a reason to leave me drowning. I didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't scream or defend myself. I just said, okay. And hung up. I turned off my phone, packed a backpack, and left the apartment that night with nothing but a hoodie, a laptop, and the quietest anger I've ever known. Not rage, not revenge, something colder. A promise I whispered into the dark. You will never have another chance to throw me away. I stayed on my best friend's couch for the first month, got a gig washing dishes at a food truck, started teaching myself UX design late at night when the city was quiet and no one was watching. I didn't tell anyone, didn't post on social media, didn't update my family. I let them believe I disappeared, that I failed. Because if that's what they needed to feel better, fine. Let them write their story. I was already building mine. In silence, in shadows, in power. My name is Jasmine. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when they said I was on my own, they were right. But they never imagined who I'd become with no one left to save me but me. And they definitely didn't expect that one day they'd come begging to the daughter they abandoned. I wasn't surprised when they cut me off. Not really. Because the truth is, I'd been disappearing in that house for years. Growing up, our family had a son. His name was Derek. My younger brother. The golden one. From the moment he could walk, they told him he was brilliant, gifted, destined for something great. From the moment I could walk, they told me to make room for him. Let Derek go first. Don't outshine your brother. Why can't you be more like him? Even my childhood report cards, straight A's, honor roll, art awards, were met with polite nods. Maybe a good job. But when Derek got a C+ in math, it was a family emergency. Tutors. Tears. Full-blown intervention. And yet, I loved him. That's the sickest part of it all. I loved my little brother. I defended him, covered for him when he wrecked Dad's car at 17. Helped him study for his SATs. Co-signed on his first apartment lease when he forgot to tell anyone his credit was trash. And through it all, I stayed quiet. Because that's what forgotten daughters do. We convince ourselves that being useful is the same as being loved. Even when I was working 2 jobs and taking night classes, I never asked for help. I didn't want to be a burden. Not like they said I was. But when I finally did fall, when anxiety turned to panic attacks, when I couldn't afford rent, when my job let me go, I thought, maybe now, maybe they'll show up. I was wrong. Instead, they took that moment, my lowest point, and used it to confirm what they had always believed. That I was the family failure. That I didn't matter. That the one who held them together in silence didn't deserve saving. It hurt, but it also freed me. Because I stopped pretending. Stopped hoping. Stopped trying to earn what should have been given freely. Love. Support. A place. They treated me like a ghost, so I let them live in the haunted house they built without me. And while they continued pouring all their money, energy, and worship into Derek's dream life, I was quietly building mine from rubble. That's the thing about exile. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you. And I chose the latter. I found a cheap therapist who met me at odd hours. I enrolled in a free coding bootcamp online. I learned how to design wireframes, build mobile prototypes, pitch myself to clients, all while working part-time and eating instant noodles. No applause, no support, but finally no comparison. And day by day, gig by gig, I felt myself coming back, not as their daughter, as my own person, one who didn't need their permission to exist, or their praise to matter. And the best part? They never even saw it coming. Because while they were busy polishing their golden son's future, they didn't notice the girl they threw away was becoming the one thing they'd never be able to replace. There's a strange kind of power in being invisible. Once you realize no one's watching, you stop performing. And that's exactly how I rebuilt my life. In silence. I started small, washing dishes at a 24-hour diner. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me something steady, predictable. Humble work, honest money. I spent my nights smelling like fryer oil, my fingertips raw from scrubbing pans. But in the early mornings, when the city was still quiet and the sky was just beginning to change color, I opened my laptop. I had a goal: learn enough UX design and front-end development to land my first client within 6 months. It didn't matter that I had no degree in tech. Didn't matter that I didn't have a fancy laptop. Didn't matter that I was still sleeping on a borrowed futon in my friend Asha's spare room. What mattered was, I was done waiting for rescue. I built a portfolio out of imaginary companies, made prototypes for non-existent apps, redesigned real websites just to prove I could. I posted my work on freelancer sites, offering discounts so low I almost hated myself, but I got my first client, a nutrition coach who needed a landing page. $75. 2 days of work. I cried when I got the payment confirmation. Not because of the money, because it was mine. Earned without begging, without shame. It was the beginning of something I never had before, self-worth that didn't depend on anyone else. A few months later, I landed a retainer gig with a small business owner. Then another. Then another. Word spread in quiet corners of the internet, not viral, not flashy. Just whispers. She's fast. She listens. She delivers. Eventually, I had enough to move out of Asha's place. I rented a small studio, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I painted the walls myself, bought a second-hand desk and a used espresso machine, lit a candle on the first night and whispered, "This is your second life. Make it better than the first." And I did. Within 2 years, I was running a small design agency from my apartment. Just me and 2 part-time freelancers I hired from the same forums I once begged for gigs on. I never posted pictures, never announced milestones, never let my family know what I was doing, because I didn't need applause. I needed peace. I kept my head down, stayed in my lane, built a reputation based on reliability and clean work. But every now and then, I checked their social media. Derek was still the golden boy. My parents still posted family dinners, birthday parties, all without me. Their captions full of praise for him. Our future, they called him. I didn't feel jealous. I felt free. Because I wasn't in those pictures for a reason. And that reason was the very thing that gave me room to rise. They pushed me out. And I used that space to build a life they'd never be able to access, no matter how much they knocked. And I didn't realize just how far I'd come until the day their world fell apart. It started with a headline. I was on my 3rd client call of the day, sipping lukewarm coffee, finalizing a prototype, when a Slack message from my assistant popped up. "Hey, isn't this your brother?" She included a link. Local news. Nothing flashy. Just a stark, clinical headline. Tech consultant arrested for wire fraud, money laundering in ongoing federal investigation. My stomach dropped. I clicked it. And there it was. His name. Derek J. Mercer. My brother. Smiling in a blurry booking photo, like he didn't realize the world was already catching fire behind him. $1.4 million. That's what he was accused of embezzling from small tech startups, taking investments, over-promising results, and funneling the money through fake shell companies. The perfect son. The one they bet everything on. The one who replaced me. Fraud. Lying. Stealing from people who had trusted him. I sat back in my chair. Not shocked. Stunned. Not because he got caught. I always knew Derek was reckless. But because for once, the world was finally seeing the truth they refused to see. By nightfall, the story spread. 3 clients dropped him publicly. 2 startups he was consulting for issued press releases. A private Facebook group for local tech founders began sharing warning posts, screenshots, horror stories. And then came the avalanche. My phone lit up, not with congratulations or celebration, but with messages from numbers I hadn't seen in years. My mom, my dad, my grandfather, all texting variations of the same line. Can we talk? We're going through something. We didn't know where else to turn. I didn't respond, because just 2 years earlier, I had been the shame of the family, the girl who wasted their money, the daughter who should have been more like Derek. Now, they needed me, because Derek's bail was set at $250,000. He had no income, no clean record, no fallback. And suddenly, the daughter they discarded looked like the only one with a functioning business, a clean name, and the kind of credibility they could use. Not love, not celebrate, use. I got an email the next morning. From my father. Subject line, please. Inside, just one paragraph. You've always been strong. I know we haven't always been supportive, but we're family. And your brother is in trouble. If there's anything you can do to help with his situation, it would mean a lot. I reread it 3 times. Then I closed the email and deleted it. No anger, no satisfaction, just stillness. Because this wasn't victory. It was validation. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need revenge. They had already punished themselves by betting everything on a lie and turning their backs on the truth. The daughter they said was a disappointment was now the only one standing, and they were just beginning to understand what that meant. I didn't respond to my father's email, so they started calling. First Mom, then Grandpa, then Derek. He left a voicemail. His voice, the same arrogant tone I'd heard all my life, now cracked, shaken. Jazz, I messed up. I need you. They're saying I need a clean cosigner or a character witness. Please. I know I haven't always. Just call me back, okay? I didn't. Not yet. I wanted to remember how they treated me when I needed help. When I was drowning, barely breathing, and asked for just 1 month's rent. I remembered Mom's voice, clear as glass. You're on your own now. And now here they were, on the edge, desperate. And I was the only rope. They started showing up everywhere. Mom emailed again, long, dramatic, begging. I was wrong. I said awful things. But you don't let family fall apart. You're better than this. Please. Just help us. That line. You're better than this. That's what manipulators say when their cruelty catches up to them. As if I owed them grace for the pain they delivered without blinking. As if being better meant letting them use me again. But I didn't respond. Because silence was the most honest language we'd ever spoken in that family. And I was finally fluent in it. Then came the flowers. They were left at my office. No card. Just a note scribbled on the back of a pharmacy receipt. We're sorry. Please forgive us. Your brother needs you. I laughed out loud when I read it. Because they didn't say I mattered. They said he needed me. Even now, I was just a tool to protect their prize. But that prize was rotting. Every day, more press emerged. Leaked texts, emails, statements from former clients. Derek's face became a symbol, not of brilliance, but of betrayal. And suddenly, my name was popping up too. Articles started noting. His sister Jasmine Mercer, a rising UX entrepreneur, has no known involvement. Even that stung them, because the world was drawing a line between us. And for once, I was on the side they couldn't touch. I got a call from a podcast that interviewed women in tech. They asked if I'd like to tell my story. I said yes. And at the end of that episode, I said, sometimes the people who bury you are the same ones who turn to you when their house burns down. But the truth is, if you didn't matter when they were safe, you don't owe them anything when they're falling. The clip went viral. And suddenly, their inboxes were as full as mine, but not with offers. With judgment. Is this the same daughter you shamed online? How's the golden boy now? Must hurt to watch the one you threw away shine. That week, I received one last email. From Derek. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I sat with it for a moment. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote back. But not with what they wanted. They didn't call ahead. They just showed up. I was in my office, reviewing a wireframe with my team, when my receptionist buzzed me. Jasmine? There's a woman and 2 men downstairs. They say they're your family. Should I? I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the window, watching the city breathe, calm, distant mine. Then I said, don't let them up. But I'll come down. They were waiting in the lobby. My mother, in her best blouse, as if dressing the part could undo what she'd done. My father, standing stiff, like pride was a sickness he couldn't cure, even now. And Derek, wearing that same hollow look from the news photo, but this time, he looked smaller, almost real. I stepped into the space like I was walking onto a stage I built with my own hands, because I had. They turned when they saw me. My mother gasped softly. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. Derek didn't even lift his head. No one spoke.
So I did.
You wanted to see me. Say it. My mother stepped forward. We made a mistake. We should have been there. I was scared, Jasmine. I didn't know how bad it was. We thought. I held up my hand. You thought I'd disappear. And I did. But you didn't expect I'd build something better than what you gave me. She blinked. We were wrong. I turned to my father. Do you remember what you said to me the night you cut me off? He didn't speak. So I repeated it for him. You said, we won't waste another dollar on a failure. You didn't just cut me off. You cut me out. He looked at the floor. Derek stepped forward. I didn't know they did all that. I was caught up in my own mess. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I need help. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder.
Thick. Crisp. Heavy.
I handed it to Derek. What's this? Everything you missed while you were busy being the golden child. Inside were screenshots of old texts, voicemails where they mocked me, a printed list of every time I helped the family financially, unreturned. And at the very back, the email I sent from the hospital, the day they told me I was on my own. I looked at all of them. You don't need a sister.
You need a lifeline.
And I'm not that anymore. My mother whispered, you're a daughter. I shook my head. I was. And when I needed you most, you didn't see a daughter. You saw an inconvenience. Derek opened the folder. Read the first page. His lips parted, just slightly. They looked frozen. Not from rage. From clarity. For the first time, they saw what they had done, all in one place. Black ink. White paper. No escape. I turned. You wanted a mirror? Here it is. Look at yourselves. And I walked away.
Past them.
Past their silence. Past the years I spent begging in my own mind for a moment like this. No more guilt. No more anger. Just peace. Because when they asked me to come back, all I had to offer was the truth. And that was far more than they ever gave me. The morning after the lobby visit, I woke up to dozens of messages. Friends. Clients. Strangers. They'd seen the podcast clip. The one where I said, if they didn't love you when you were quiet, broke, and bleeding, don't hand them your peace when you've healed. It had gone viral. Shared on TikTok, quoted on Instagram, stitched with stories from women across the world, daughters, sisters, black sheep, people who had been erased,
dismissed,
told they were a burden. And now, they were holding the mic. That clip opened the door to something bigger, a TEDx invitation.
Not to talk about tech,
but about resilience. The title they gave it? The Day I Became My Own Family. I stood on stage in a blood-red suit and black heels, my quiet rebellion against every dress like a good girl command I grew up with. And I told the truth. I talked about how people only love you when you serve a function, how silence becomes survival, how we convince ourselves that staying small is the price of belonging. And I told them what I learned. Some people will only call you family when they need a scapegoat or a savior. And it's not your job to be either. The applause was deafening. After the talk, a girl about 20 hugged me so tightly, I thought I'd break. "That was me," she whispered. "Your whole story, that was me." That was the moment I realized. This was bigger than Derek. Bigger than my parents. Bigger than revenge. This was a revolution. I wasn't just rebuilding for myself anymore. I was giving others a blueprint. I launched a community called the Unchosen Daughters, a digital space where women who'd been pushed out could connect, heal, rebuild, rise. We provided mental health grants, career mentorship, legal aid for inheritance disputes, emergency housing for girls cast out by abusive families. Within 3 months, we had 18,000 members. And Derek? Still in jail. They tried one last time. His lawyer reached out, asking if I'd write a character letter for sentencing. They said my clean name, my successful image, could soften the judge's stance. I declined. Formally. Legally. Not with spite. With clarity. "My brother does not belong to me," I wrote. "I was not invited to his rise. I will not be enlisted in his fall." And I meant it, because they taught me that family is conditional. But I learned how to build one that wasn't. One woman at a time. They came one last time. I was at my foundation's downtown event, a quiet evening of mentorship matches, success stories, and donated laptops for girls starting their first freelance careers. I had just finished speaking when I saw them across the room, my mom, dad, and grandpa. Older.
Softer.
Not just humbled, hollow. They didn't try to cause a scene. They waited until the crowd faded and approached slowly, like people who had learned the hard way that I no longer owed them softness. My father spoke first. "We watched your talk. We've read the stories. You've done well." My mother nodded. "We just wanted to say we're proud. And we're sorry." Grandpa stepped forward last. "We were wrong about you. We were wrong to let you go." That was the first time he'd ever said something like that. And for the first time in years, I looked at them and didn't feel rage. Or hurt. I felt distance.
Peace.
Like I was standing on the shore while they were still lost at sea. Then my mom said it. "Your brother, they're saying he might get 10 years. Unless we can show he's part of a stable family support system. If you could just talk to the judge or sign something, you'd be saving him." And that was it.
The ask.
After everything, they still couldn't come without needing something. Still couldn't just love me without a transaction. I looked at them, really looked, and realized they hadn't come to make peace. They'd come to use me again. And this time, I was ready. I stepped closer.
Calm. Certain.
"You told me I was on my own." They all froze. "You told me I was a failure. That I brought shame. That I wasn't worth another dollar. You watched me drown and blamed me for the water." They didn't speak. So I kept going. "Now you want me to save the son you worshipped while you erased your daughter." I paused. Then I leaned in, met their eyes one by one, and said, "You're right. I was on my own. And so is he." Silence. Real, devastating silence. My mother blinked rapidly, lips parting. My father looked like he'd been punched. Grandpa closed his eyes. I turned and walked away. And this time they didn't follow. Because they knew. It was over. Later that night, I opened my laptop and typed the final words for my first book, a memoir that had already been picked up by a publisher. Title: On My Own, How I Became What They Tried to Bury. And the dedication? To every daughter they threw away. May your silence grow into a voice so loud, they can never pretend they didn't hear you. Because this story isn't just about what I survived. It's about what I built. Without them. In spite of them. Beyond them. They told me I was on my own. They were right. That's how I became untouchable.
Debt.
That was the word they weaponized first. Not hello. Not, "We're sorry to show up unannounced." Just debt, heavy, cold, and dropped like a bomb on my kitchen table. My mom pushed a manila folder toward me. "It's worse than we thought. We're in serious trouble, Riley." My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes already angry. "We need you to step up for the family." I glanced at the paperwork. It wasn't official, not at first glance. Just printouts of loan balances, interest rates, vague statements. Mom's voice cracked. The money's gone. The payments are months overdue. We could lose everything. You have a house, Riley. You can help. We need you to sell it, Dad added. You're not married, no kids. You can always get another place. I stared at them. This house wasn't a gift. It wasn't inherited or handed down. I bought it with income from my online store, every handmade product, every customer email, every 2 a.m. inventory night.
Me.
And now they wanted it. Mom sniffled. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent. We've already taken a hit co-signing for your brother's dorm back then. We can't risk another collection on our name. There it was. The subtle dig. The reminder that they had helped me once, years ago, with $2,000 toward a college dorm I paid off within 6 months. Dad leaned forward. This store thing of yours, we don't blame you. You tried. But it wasn't enough. The timing, the taxes, whatever it was, we're not angry. We just need to fix it. They weren't asking. They were telling me I was the reason they were struggling. Your small business ruined our finances, Mom said flatly. Now fix it. I should have screamed. Should have flipped the table. Should have told them what I already knew. But instead, I just nodded.
Calm. Cold.
Okay, I said. Mom blinked. Okay, let's go to the bank. I'll sign whatever I need to. But we're doing it the right way, with a manager present. Everything on record. They agreed a little too eagerly, because they thought they had me. They didn't know I'd spent the last 48 hours rebuilding this exact folder, not with assumptions, but with facts. They didn't know I'd already called the bank and verified the account number they so conveniently forgot. They didn't know I'd asked to speak to the loan officer who opened the file, or that he'd confirmed the truth over a recorded call. Because this debt wasn't mine. The balance wasn't tied to my name. The money wasn't used to cover any business taxes. And the loan had Ethan's signature on it. My brother. The golden boy. The one they never questioned. The one who crashed 2 cars, got bailed out of college debt, and still got a birthday trip to Mexico last year. I didn't say anything as I walked them to the door. I just smiled. Because I wasn't going to argue about my worth. I wasn't going to defend my business. I was going to let the bank manager do it for me. My name is Riley. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because they came to take my house. But I came to take back the truth. And what they find out next will change everything. Being blamed wasn't new. I was always the one who cost too much, asked too many questions, and needed too much attention. My brother Ethan? He was the miracle. The one who could wreck the car and still be met with. He's just under pressure. He'll bounce back. I once came home crying after getting an A- because I knew it wouldn't be enough. Mom said, "Don't overreact. You're not failing. Yet." Meanwhile, Ethan failed 2 semesters of college and still got a new laptop. They never called it favoritism, but it was always there, in the way they spoke to him, like he was made of potential. And to me, like I was made of burden. Even when I started my online store, candles, custom home pieces, little things I poured hours of design into, they rolled their eyes. "That's cute," Dad said once. "But when are you going to get a real job?" "It's a hobby, not a future," Mom added. When I made my first $10,000 month, I told no one. Because when you're the family's punching bag, even your success becomes something they'll either minimize or take credit for later. I saved quietly, bought my home quietly, renovated the guest room into a shipping space, labeled every box with my own hands. Ethan, meanwhile, floated from one dream to the next. First it was crypto, then personal training, then some sports consulting, hustle, where he claimed he'd land professional athletes as clients. All funded by mystery money. Dad once gave him $5,000 to clear his head after a breakup. Mom let him use her credit card just this once, for a drone and GoPro he never used. But when I once asked to split the bill at dinner, "You'd think I'd set fire to the table." "You're the one with the business," Mom snapped. "We paid for so much when you were younger. You owe us." I was always in debt to them, emotionally, financially, even spiritually. Because daughters like me aren't raised to thrive. We're raised to repay. So when they came storming into my home blaming me for the family's debt, it wasn't new. It was just louder. The tone was familiar. You cost us. You failed us. You owe us. But this time, they messed up. Because while they assumed Ethan was spotless, I was already staring at his signature. I'd found the loan document 3 days earlier when I called the bank to verify the account. I wasn't even looking for a name. I just wanted the truth. And the bank manager hesitated before saying it. It was taken out last year. Under your parents' joint name, co-signed by Ethan Mercer. For a vehicle. Luxury class. A vehicle? Ethan told them he was driving a loaner from a sponsor. He lied. And that debt, the one they blamed on me, was the result of his sports car joyride. I didn't tell them yet, because they needed to walk into that bank feeling proud, ready to humble me, ready to crush me with paperwork and pressure and guilt. Let them walk in smug. I wanted the silence. I wanted the moment, because this time, they were going to hear the truth. Not from me, from their own damn son. After they left my house, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, not crying, not panicking, just staring at the folder they left behind. At first glance, it looked convincing: past due balances, lender names, interest rates, minimum payments due. But something didn't sit right. They claimed the debt was tied to missed business taxes, supposedly mine, but I've been using the same small business accountant for 4 years. I knew my books were clean. I paid early. I kept records. My accountant's literal motto was receipts or it didn't happen. So, I did what they never expected. I read,
Carefully.
line by line. I started cross-referencing the papers with my own records. None of it matched. The debt account wasn't under my EIN. The business name they listed wasn't even mine. It was a shell name I'd never seen. And then came the real tell. A reference number at the top of a loan summary. For digits I didn't recognize. I called my bank and gave them the number. Told them I was trying to verify a supposed lien on my business account. The rep pulled up the file. That's not tied to a business account, ma'am. It's a personal loan. Issued to 2 primary account holders. Joint. I sat up straighter. Whose names? She paused. I'm sorry. I can't share that. I asked to speak to a manager. She transferred me. He answered, older voice, calm tone. I told him the situation, that my parents were blaming me for a debt I knew wasn't mine. There was a long silence before he asked, Are you Riley Mercer? Yes. I can confirm this much. The loan was taken under your parents' name. It was co-signed. Not by you. I didn't breathe. Who co-signed it? I asked. He paused. Then, Ethan Mercer. Signed last June. I almost laughed. Of course it was June. That was when he posted a blurry Instagram story from inside a convertible, captioned, Manifesting what I deserve. I thanked the manager. Asked for a copy of the original paperwork. He agreed, said if I brought my ID and came in person, he'd walk me through the file. I scheduled the appointment for Monday. Then I called Ethan. No answer. So I did what every woman raised in gaslight land learns to do. I baited him. I sent a casual voice message. Hey, just saw mom and dad. They're saying I caused the family debt. I know that's not true, but if you know something I don't, now's the time to tell me. He responded with a voice note 5 minutes later. What he didn't know. I recorded the whole thing. Look, I didn't think it'd blow up like this. I needed the car to look successful, okay? The flipping thing didn't work out, but I had a plan. I was going to pay it back. Mom and Dad never knew I used their names. But they'd be fine once it was done. Fine? They were about to lose their retirement account. And he thought they'd be fine. I saved the recording. Backed it up twice. Printed the transcript. Because when we walked into that bank, I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to return their guilt gift-wrapped in truth. The lobby was too quiet when we walked in. My mother looked polished. Pearls, perfume, false pride. My dad looked serious, like a man ready to make a daughter feel small. I looked calm, because I wasn't here to argue. I was here to watch the floor fall out from under them. We were escorted into a private meeting room by Mr. Gilliam, the same manager I'd spoken to on the phone. He smiled politely at them. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, thank you for coming." "Ms. Mercer, let's get started." They nodded like they'd done this before. Like they were professionals, respectable, justified, the injured party. Mom placed the manila folder on the table like evidence in court. "We're here because Riley agreed to assist with the loan payoff tied to her business. We just need the paperwork finalized to begin the house transfer process." I said nothing. Gilliam flipped open a much thicker, official folder from the bank side. He cleared his throat. "There's been some confusion about the debt in question, and we want to clarify it." Mom smiled. Dad tapped his pen. "Please," Dad said. "Let's make this easy." Gilliam turned a page, then another, and then, calmly, he slid one paper forward. "This is the loan you're referring to. Balance, $82,900. Originally taken out in June of last year." He slid it closer to my parents. "Signed by the primary account holders, Mr. and Mrs. Mercer." My parents nodded. "And co-signed by." He flipped the page slowly. I watched the moment it hit. Their faces. Frozen.
Pale.
Ethan Mercer. Silence. Gilliam let the page sit there like a brick on the table. "Ms. Mercer here is not attached to this loan in any way. There is no business name listed. No tax ID. This was not a business debt. It was a personal loan used for a vehicle, a high-end sports model, based on our underwriting notes." Mom's eyes widened. "What? That's not possible." Dad leaned forward. "You must be mistaken. Riley's business is the one that—" "No, Dad," I said quietly. "You're mistaken. Ethan took out a loan using your names. You co-signed something you didn't understand, and you let me take the fall for it." They turned to me, mouths open, but I didn't stop. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final nail, and, just in case you need more proof, I pressed play on my phone. Ethan's voice filled the room. They never knew I used their names, but they'd be fine once it was done. Mom gasped. Dad looked like he'd been punched. I let the recording finish. Gilliam, still professional, folded his hands. "Given this context, Ms. Mercer has no legal or financial responsibility to this loan. We strongly suggest you consult with your son and your attorney." I stood up.
Calm.
Unshaken. "You came to make me your scapegoat again. You wanted me to sell my home, my life, to cover his mess. And you didn't even bother to check the paperwork." Mom's voice cracked. "Riley, we didn't know. You didn't care." I walked out. They didn't follow. They couldn't. Because for once, the evidence spoke louder than their shame. And this time, I didn't have to lift a single finger to burn their house of lies down. I didn't hear from them for 2 days. Not a call. Not a text. Then, on the third morning, I woke up to a frantic voicemail from my dad. "It's Ethan. He says you ambushed him. What the hell are you trying to do? You didn't have to play that recording. We could have worked this out like a family." That word again.
Family.
A word they only pulled out when I was useful. I listened to it once, then deleted it. Because here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't trying to destroy Ethan. He'd already done that himself. All I did was let the truth breathe. Later that day, a friend sent me a screenshot from Ethan's private Instagram story, which, clearly, wasn't as private as he thought. It was a close-up of the sports car in question, a matte gray two-door coupe with vanity plates that read "Playoff." The caption? "Guess who finally paid off his ride? #HustlerLife, #grindset." Posted 3 weeks ago. 3
Weeks.
Before my parents showed up at my house crying broke. Before they tried to rip my keys out of my hands to save a lie they didn't even know existed. That image went into my digital evidence folder. Not because I needed it for court, because it was mine. Proof that every time they looked me in the face and said, "You ruined us," they were protecting the real wrecking ball.
And now?
Their golden boy was radioactive. I heard through a mutual cousin that my parents finally confronted him, and it wasn't calm. Mom screamed. Dad threw a coffee mug. Ethan denied it at first, then tried to spin it. I did it for us. I was trying to elevate. It was gonna work. Then, like every coward does when backed into a corner. He blamed them. You should have read what you were signing. For once, the guilt didn't land on me. It landed where it belonged, squarely in the center of the house they built on illusion and convenience. Meanwhile, the bank had begun the collection process. The loan was too far gone. Their credit? Tanking. I got another voicemail from Mom. Her voice hoarse, unfamiliar. We were wrong. About all of it.
About you.
We should have asked questions. We should have looked harder. We didn't know. No, they didn't. Because they never bothered to know. They were too busy believing Ethan's smoke while trying to suffocate my fire. But the damage wasn't just inside the house now. It was leaking. One of their friends, the chairwoman of the neighborhood board, found out about the debt. Apparently, she overheard part of the bank blow up while waiting for her appointment. By the end of the week, their shame was making the rounds. Polite whispers like razor blades. They tried to steal from their daughter. Thought they raised a CEO, but it was just a con man in Gucci. You know Riley paid for that house herself, right? Girl built an empire while they backed a liar. I didn't say a word. Didn't post.
Didn't subtweet.
Didn't gloat. Because I didn't need to. Their legacy was falling apart in real time. And for once, it had nothing to do with me. I thought Ethan would fight. Lie harder. Spin faster. Find some twisted way to make himself the victim, or worse, the hero. But when I saw him next, he looked hollow. It was at a family cookout. Not mine. I don't host those anymore. But a distant cousin invited me, not knowing the drama, just trying to be polite. I went curious. Not for revenge. For confirmation. To see the boy they worship standing in the wreckage they used to call potential. And there he was. Hoodie. Sunglasses. Slouched shoulders. He didn't even park the sports car. Because it had been repossessed. Turns out, after the bank launched full collection efforts and placed liens on my parents' accounts, the repo company swooped in fast. The car he bought on their names?
Gone.
The business he said he was launching? Didn't exist beyond a Canva pitch deck and 3 fake LLC documents. His Instagram? Scrubbed. Deleted. His friends? Silent. The moment the money ran out, so did the crowd. But I didn't go near him. I just watched. From across the lawn, he glanced at me once, and that was all it took. His shoulders sank even lower. He knew I wasn't coming over. Because this time, he had to sit in it. Alone. The same way I did when I was 25, curled on the floor of my first shipping room, crying because a customer threatened to sue over a broken candle and I had $6.19 to my name. I sat in it, built through it, owned it, and no one, not even my family, offered me a lifeline. Now, it was Ethan's turn. Later that night, my parents tried to call me. Again. This time it was Dad's voice on the voicemail. We can't believe how blind we were. He fooled all of us. I thought he had it under control.
Pause.
And we took it out on you. You didn't deserve that.
Pause.
I know it's too late. But we're proud of what you've built. I saved the message. Not because I needed it, but because I want a record of what finally broke them. Not my failures. Their own faith in the wrong child. They gambled everything on Ethan. And when it all burned, they came running to the daughter they left in the cold. But I didn't open the door. I didn't rage. I didn't post screenshots. I didn't demand apologies on my knees. I just kept moving. I had client calls, inventory to restock, an upcoming launch with a sustainable brand that had been following me for 2 years. My life had outgrown them. And that was the real revenge. Not watching Ethan fall, but realizing I didn't care whether he got back up. Because I was no longer living in reaction to their chaos. I was no longer the sibling in the shadows. I was the one with stability, peace, control, and no more need to prove a single thing. Ethan's collapse wasn't my triumph. My boundary was. I didn't plan to go public. For a long time, I believed dignity was quiet. That growth meant walking away with your head high and your mouth shut. But silence is only powerful if you chose it. And mine was forced. For years, I swallowed the guilt, the blame, The shame of being the problem child. I let them call my business a hobby. I let them call my stability luck. I let them say I should be grateful they let me stay. I was done letting them say anything. So I wrote a post. Not a rant. Not revenge porn. Just a clear, honest caption above a photo of my first apartment floor, covered in bubble mailers and handwritten thank you cards from customers. I started here. Alone. Laughed at, overlooked, called a dreamer. Years later, my family tried to take the home I bought to cover a debt I didn't create. They said it was mine. It wasn't. I stayed silent to keep the peace. But silence doesn't protect you. It protects them. I'm not silent anymore. The post blew up. Not viral in a celebrity way, viral in a real way. Women commented. I was the scapegoat too. My brother stole my credit score. Thank you for saying this. They said I was selfish when I refused to bail the family out. I cried reading this. People didn't just read my story. They saw themselves in it. That's when the DMs started flooding in. Then podcast invites. Then panel requests. A week later, I sat down on a podcast titled Quiet No More and spoke into the mic for the first time without trembling. My name is Riley. I built my life in silence because speaking up made me the villain. But if they call you a problem every time you ask to be respected, maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe the problem is what they want you to accept. That clip alone got 2 million plays. The next day, I launched a new branch of my store. Not yours. Statement pieces. Minimalist designs. Every product labeled with phrases like, daughter, not doormat. Silence was never consent. Not the backup plan. Built without permission. It sold out in 4 hours. I donated part of the proceeds to a fund that helps women reclaim financial identity after family credit abuse. Something I wish I'd had. Then I created a space. The Riley Mercer Grant. $5,000 for first-time women entrepreneurs building their business with no support. In the application, one question. What's one thing they said you'd never do? I wasn't just moving on. I was planting flags. Because being erased doesn't mean you stop existing. It just means it's time to paint your story on the walls they tried to push you out of. And when they see your name there, they'll know you didn't just survive. You rewrote the whole script. They asked to meet one last time. Not over the phone. Not through voicemails. In person. We'd like to talk, my mom texted. Face to face. I hesitated. Not out of fear, but calculation. I didn't owe them anything. But something in me said, let them see who you became. So I agreed. But not at my home. Not on their terms. I chose the location, my office. The headquarters of a business they once called a cute distraction. The space built on every late-night hustle, every doubted move, every ignored win. When they arrived, they looked nervous. Mom clutched her purse like it was armor. Dad looked older. Smaller. Even Ethan came, hands in his pockets, face drawn tight. I offered no hugs. No smiles. Just a seat. They sat. The silence was heavier than their apologies could ever be. Dad spoke first. We've been watching. Seeing what you've done. It's impressive. I nodded once. Mom leaned forward. We were wrong. About everything. We blamed you for a mess that wasn't yours. We should have believed you. I said nothing. Ethan cleared his throat. I was selfish. I get it now. I ruined things for everyone, but especially you. I'm sorry, Riley. It all sounded sincere.
Polished.
Almost rehearsed. Then Mom said the thing I knew was coming. We just want to move forward. Start fresh. Be a family again. There it was. The real ask. Not forgiveness. Access. They wanted back in. Back into the comfort. Back into the house they tried to steal. Back into the life I built without them. I stood, walked to the window, then turned and finally spoke. You blamed me, shamed me, tried to take from me, and never once stopped to ask how I was even surviving. They stayed silent. You wanted me to sell my house, to fix a lie someone else wrote, because it was easier to point at the daughter you never understood than to look at the son you raised like royalty. Mom opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. You thought I'd go quietly, that I'd swallow it again. That's what shocked you, not the loan, not the car, not the mess. What shocked you was that I didn't break this time. They all looked away, so I gave them what they came for. A line they never forget. You want to start fresh? Start with yourselves. Because I already did. And it didn't include any of you. Mom started to cry. Ethan said nothing. Dad just nodded, like deep down he finally understood. I walked to the door. Opened it. They left without another word. No drama. No begging. No, we'll change. Just the sound of a door closing behind them. Not slammed. Not locked.
Just done.
That night, I stood in the hallway of my home, the one they tried to take, and looked around.
Light. Clean.
Quiet.
Mine.
My phone buzzed a notification. Order #8624 confirmed. Then another. Riley Mercer grant recipient number 4 funded. I smiled. Because this was the legacy they never imagined I'd build. One that didn't just survive their absence, it thrived in it. They blamed me for what they were too afraid to face. I didn't fight them. I just showed them who I became when they stopped holding me down.